How the son of French immigrants built the first free reed organ instruments in the United States of America. On February 14, 1880, a man named James Bazin published a newspaper article with the headline, "First Reed Organs in America." A month later, Mr. Bazin was visited by two reporters who wanted to know more about the history of the first free reed organs in America. Based on these two newspaper articles and research on the internet, I have tried to recreate all the free reed musical instruments invented and mentioned by James Amiraux Bazin. In these two James Bazin videos you will learn when, where, and how Bazin invented these fascinating music instruments. James Amiraux Bazin, Boston 1798, Canton, Ponkapoag, 1883.
J'aime Amiraux Bazin.
Or Amireaux.
Amireaux.
James Bazin was a child of French Huguenots who emigrated from Europe to America in 1788 from the Isle of Jersey. Born in Boston, Massachusetts in 1798 as the fifth of 10 children. Boston 1800, population 24,937. 1812, Bazin's family moved from Boston to Ponkapoag. Learn more about the history of the Native Americans in Boston and Ponkapoag at Massachusetts Massachusetts, the Massachusetts tribe at Ponkapoag. Ponkapoag, where Bazin stayed until the end of his life. Part 2 of 2. James Amiraux Bazin, free reed musical instruments with Bellows. In 1821, James Bazin repaired a free reed pitch pipe. Shortly afterwards, he developed his own brass sliding pitch pipe. He continued to experiment with the free reed technique and invented and developed more free reed music instruments. But except for his brass sliding pitch pipe, he could hardly find any buyers for his instruments. But when the first harmonicas came from Europe to the USA in 1827, the demand for Bazin harmonicas also increased. 1830, Bazin developed a tuning table with bellows that were operated by swinging treadles to tune his mouth-blown instruments. 1830, Bazin began to combine his mouth-blown free reed instruments with bellows technology. At first, Bazin began experimenting with different key layouts and key assignments. 1831, Knobs harmonica. For 1831, Bazin describes a knobs harmonica, which he developed, consisting of pipes like those of the harmonica, valves, knobs in 2 lines, a device for changing the key, a device for sounding the accidental flats and sharps. 10 knobs as shown in the description. (1831 to 1833), first free reed bellows instrument, Melodeon organ. Bazin describes in Melodeon organ, he developed between 1831 and 1833, 2 pieces. Description: same arrangement of knobs as the harmonica with buttons, valves and pipes differently, tilting bellows. The template for my 3D model was the lap organ on the website of the Canton Historical Society, with the description, invented by James Bazin, summer 1831. The further description also matches the text from the newspaper of 1880. On another picture, with 2 mouth-blown free reed instruments built by James Bazin, you can recognize this Melodeon. (1831 to 1833), reed organ with shifting movement. Around 1831 to 33, Bazin built a reed organ with an innovative shifting mechanism. I have not found a preserved model on the internet. Description components: swinging bellows, square knobs for keys, regular scale arranged the same as the others, semitones placed in a different row behind the regular scale. A description of the mechanism comes from Bazin himself, in the newspaper article, and from two journalists who visited him 1 month later. The exact construction of this mechanism would require more research. I have currently created a purely speculative fictional 3D model to represent a Bazin reed organ with rectangular knobs and a shifting mechanism. Bazin writes that he has built several of this type. It is possible that one has survived somewhere. 1833, reed plates, 4 seraphims. Around 1833, Bazin built reed plates for individual free reed organ owners in Boston. Bazin writes that at that time, in Boston there were owners of imported European reed organs, and owners of replicas of European free reed organs. Bazin thought that these instruments were called seraphims, and that they first came from Germany. A model preserved in the Met shows what such an instrument might have looked like at that time in Boston. In 1833, there were already different free reed organs in Europe, of which one variant probably reached Boston. Whether they were seraphims, or fisharmonicas, or other free reed organs from Europe, is not clear. (1835) Accordion by James Bazin. The first accordion was invented in Europe, Vienna in 1829, by Cyril Damian. It had 5 keys, and could play 10 chords. 2 chords per key. The first accordion Bazin saw was a German accordion. After that, according to Bazin, mostly French accordions came to the USA that could play single notes. In January 1835, Bazin built an accordion and sold it in Boston. There is probably no Bazin accordion that has survived, but Bazin describes the shape of the accordion reed plates that he developed and used for his accordion. On Melodeon.net I found a drawing of the Bazin accordion reeds, which was probably developed by Bazin for his accordion. (1836) Rocking Melodeon, elbow organ, lap organ. Bazin says that the name Melodeon was first used in March 1836 for one of his instruments with tilting bellows, and what he previously called Melodium. On his first tilting bellows instruments, the free reeds were in pipes, as with his first harmonicas. But in his new variants in 1835-36, he used the reeds he had developed for the accordion in 1835. Adapted to a one-way wind direction technology. Learn more about the construction of a lap organ by James Amiraux Bazin in an extra video. Coming next. I found 3 lap organ models by James Bazin online. This model is dated 1831 by the Canton Historical Society. If the year is correct, it is one or the first model with tilting bellows with free reeds in pipes and the experimental knobs arrangement. For the first 6 models, Bazin experimented with different knobs arrangements, but the dealers wanted a keys layout that was similar to the pianoforte. These 2 models were dated 1835. The knobs are already arranged in the pianoforte layout. Called Melodeon, Rocking Melodeon, lap organ, or elbow organ. The spread of the lap organ. Since 1836 the lap organ became a popular instrument, and spread throughout the USA. New variants were developed, with keys, with buttons, or with a stand for a foot pedal. Different manufacturers produced this instrument. James Amiraux Bazin, Ponkapoag, Abraham Prescott, Concord, Daniel B. Bartlett, Concord, Charles Austin, Concord, Austin UND Dearborn, Concord, J. Foster. In the two newspaper articles, Bazin describes how the lap organ spread in the USA, and he corrects time references, made in other music journals about the lap organ. 1836, Abraham Prescott, a music dealer from Concord, buys one or two Bazin Melodeons from the music dealer Jos L. Bates in Boston for a young man who works for him, and copies them. These copies were then sold in Boston. According to Bazin, the name Melodeon has since been used randomly for any kind of free reed instrument in the USA. To keep the instrument light and portable, new key arrangements were invented to fit more notes into a smaller space. Bazin felt that the use of piano keys for the Melodeon was a step backwards. I found two more free reed organs made by James Amiraux Bazin. I couldn't place exactly in time. Smithsonian, Bazin reed organ. Seraphine, Old Colony Historical Society Museum. Since they are both equipped with Bazin's double bellows with swinging treadles, they were probably developed after 1830. In 1841 Bazin received a silver medal for an organ pianoforte at the exhibition of the Mechanic Association. I cannot tell if it was one of these two models. Interesting are the knobs of the Seraphine, which same design Bazin also used for one of his lap organs. I can't say whether he built the lap organ or the Seraphine first, but both were probably made after 1835. James Amiraux Bazin was one of the outstanding musical instrument inventors of the 19th century. He began with a simple tuning pipe, and learned the free reed technique and musical instrument making through self-study. He often received the newly developed free reed instruments, or their descriptions, from Europe with a time delay, and yet he was sometimes ahead of the European musical instrument makers. Bazin's instruments are not only aesthetic, but also very innovative. His musical instruments show that James Bazin was always researching further developments and improvements, and was not looking for an economically profitable musical instrument. Amazing what beautiful musical instruments James Bazin developed in a small village like Ponkapoag. James Amiraux Bazin, who developed the first free reed instruments in the USA, should definitely be part of free reed history. What else you should also know about James Bazin? Bazin also invented other things, besides musical instruments. The Canton Historical Society owns several musical instruments, objects, and documents of James Amiraux Bazin. James Bazin is described as a multi-talented, active, public-spirited man who was interested in community life. He received his education in the Boston public schools until the age of 14. Bazin never married. He lived in a large house in Ponkapoag with his sister Delicia. The James Bazin House still stands today next to the entrance to the Ponkapoag Golf Course. Bazin had a camera obscura in his house. Bazin's portrait, drawn by R.C. Steadman. When he died in 1883, at age 85, his obituary read, "His long life had been a comfort to himself, and a credit to his adopted town and fellow citizens. Many thanks, for your wonderful musical instruments, Mr. James Amiraux Bazin." 200 years after the invention of these beautiful instruments, I am still inspired by this unique Bazin design. Coming in the next part. In the next part of this series, you can learn how the Rocking Melodeon from Bazin became a real, free-reed organ that changed the history of music instruments in the USA forever. Research and experimentation continued. The Rocking Melodeon became the Melodeon, the first commercially successful free-reed organ in the USA. The first free-reed organ factories were built. Many new fascinating stories from the history of the American free-reed organ.